This is part 3 of the Off-Grid Expedition 3.0 review. The trailer comes with two 12-volt 105 amp-hour advanced lead-acid batteries, also called AGM or absorbent glass matte batteries. Note that AGM batteries should only be discharged to 50% capacity, so the 200 amp-hour between the two batteries is actually only 100 effective amp-hours. So I chose the upgraded dual lithium iron phosphate 100 amp-hour batteries, and since lithium batteries can be nearly fully discharged, it does give the full 200 amp-hour capacity. Since I often go for weeks off-grid, I wanted the maximum battery capacity. Lithium batteries are also lighter weight than AGM batteries. Lithium batteries have the drawback up here in the north to not charge at very low temperatures, or that you can severely damage them if they charge below freezing. But these batteries have a temperature management system with a built-in direct current heater that will keep their temperatures in a usable range. They must of course not fully discharge for this to work, so the trailer should not be stored long-term at freezing temperatures, or you should remove the batteries. It is a bit of a mission to access the batteries. The batteries are charged via a 30 amp cord that is supplied with the trailer. It has an RV style pin and plate plug, but comes with a standard wall outlet 3-prong adapter. There is a ZAMP solar port on the trailer that can take up to 20 amp power. So the options for power are plug-in shore power or a generator, or solar panels that you can choose as an add-on. There is an option of charging through the 7-pin plug from your car when driving. The 7-pin plug connector cable from your car plug goes to a junction box in the front storage box. The black auxiliary power wire from the 7-pin plug goes through the junction box, and my trailer came with that wire sealed off but available to attach to the battery for charging while driving. They do not connect it and leave it up to the user to find out if their car is wired correctly to supply power to the trailer battery without overloading the alternator or inadvertently discharging your tow vehicle battery and sitting with a dead car in a remote place. You need to know if your battery power to the trailer stops when you turn the ignition off to avoid draining your car battery. So I have left it disconnected. I'm pretty sure my car is wired with a 30 amp relay and circuit breaker in the engine fuse box that's only connected when the ignition is in the on position, so that the trailer is actually isolated from the vehicle battery when the engine is stopped, but I don't know if using it does put added load on the alternator, so I've just left it off. With two lithium batteries, I had to choose the upgraded 2000 watt Xantrex Freedom pure sine wave inverter charger unit. It has two 3-prong plug outlets on it and supplies alternating current to 4 outlets in the trailer. 2 are in the cabinet at the air conditioner. The charger on the 2000 watt unit can charge the battery at a direct current rate of 80 amps and can give alternating current output of 2000 watt. The electrical box has 2 breakers that you can control. One is on the system from the battery to the 12-volt fuse block for all the 12-volt direct current power applications. This includes the fridge, interior and exterior lights, the USB charging ports, and the power needed for the hot water heater control, furnace control, and stove gas cutoff control. So note that you cannot use the stove, furnace, or hot water heater, even though they run on gas, without power as well. You can drain water from your water tank without power from the water drain below the trailer. The second breaker is for the inverter charger unit and must be on if you are shore charging or using alternating current outlets. I have noticed that you do not need any breaker on when solar charging, and the batteries charge even if both breakers are off. There is a small constant drain from the battery when the alternating current or direct current breakers are on, just because the LED lights indicating battery voltage in the cabin and on the alternating current outlets are on. There is a switch on the inverter. You can charge from shore power even if this inverter button is off, as long as the alternating current breaker is on. You must switch it on though to use the 3-prong plugs in the cabin. Once it is on in the front electrical box, you can control it from the cabin panel and switch it off from inside. That is useful because even if you are not using any plugs, the fans in the inverter itself draw power. If the inverter is left on but you're not using it, it draws about 1.5 amps of power per hour. I at first opted for the Canada-proof 180 watt solar panel, but on the advice of the salesperson at Off-Grid Trailers, I changed to the lighter, more portable 100 watt Go Power Duralite panel. It comes with a needed 30 amp charge controller as well as a 12-foot extension cord and the needed connector to plug into the ZAMP outlet on the trailer. I think the portable panel is better than a fixed panel on the trailer because I always try to park out of the sun. Then you can at least shift the panel around on the extension to a sunny spot. Of course you could have both, with a fixed panel on the roof for charging when driving. I was at first skeptical about how effective the panel was because with cloudy conditions I would get 0.5 to 1 amp charging current. The Truma 69-liter fridge is rated to draw an average of 0.8 amps per hour, but that depends on the outside temperature and what you have set the fridge or freezer temps to. I found to get it to temperature it would run close to 4 amps. So the solar charging was usually less than the 1 to 4 amps the fridge was drawing, and my battery was progressively discharging and with full use would only give around 3 days battery life. But when I had clear days and the panel could be placed in direct sunlight, it generated 4 amps. It's rated to be able to generate 5.06 amps. Then a few hours in the sun would be more than enough to keep my battery above 90% for weeks if I only powered my fridge on 2 to 3 times a day to get it to the set temperature and then put it off again. So where you camp and the sun conditions will heavily determine how long you could stay off-grid. The battery charge state can be monitored via a Bluetooth connection and an app on your phone. The app shows you how much current is being drawn at any moment or how much charge is going into the battery, so you can see if your solar charging is balancing usage at any moment. The problem I found was that the app was not reliable and regularly disconnected from the battery, and then I have no idea of the battery charge left. Then you have to put the battery off by opening the battery panel, which requires removing a lot of screws, and the front battery compartment panel, which is a pain. Then you cycle the battery off via the power button on it and then on again. Once there was a pebble stuck in the head of one of the screws and I could not get it out without the risk of stripping the screw. Only after a couple of days did the debris wash out enough to get the panel off and cycle the battery on and off. Ideally, I think off-grid trailers should make a small access panel in the front storage box above the battery with a thumb screw to reach the power button on the battery. I would suggest if you get a trailer to ask them to fit a permanent hardwired battery charge monitor in the front box, which is available for the Go Power battery, so you're not dependent on the app or a Bluetooth connection to see the battery level. Of course, you can just use the voltage indicator and a reference table to determine the percentage state of charge of the battery. You should use the voltage indicator on the inverter, not the one in the cabin, which is less accurate. I opted for the 23-0 270-degree awning, which works well. It deploys and folds up in minutes. If there is no wind, you don't need any guy ropes, which is nice. I always use the supporting poles to take the force off the hinges of the awning arms. You do have to stake out the awning in wind or the wind will lift it up and your supporting poles will fall out with the risk of damaging the awning. If it rains, you also have to stake out the area between the poles, otherwise water pools on top of the awning. If you have it fully staked out, there are a lot of guy ropes. One thing to be aware of is that the flat profile of the awning makes that condensation does accumulate under the awning and tends to drip down under it rather than running down to the edge like on a more steeply sloped awning. That happens even when the free edges are staked down to allow water drainage off the top, so things stored under the awning did tend to get wet. I did not get the walls for the awning. I am just put off by the added steps of sliding in all the panels that take me back to the longer and more complex setup and breaking down process when camping with tarps versus just folding the awning away. The one benefit would be to shelter the stove from the wind, which it is sensitive to. There are also still gaps for mosquitoes if you put the walls up. So I've found I still need a mosquito shelter in Canada, and mine has removable side panels if I need shelter from the wind. So the awning walls don't give me any added value other than sheltering the stove. The awning does cover the rear hatch if you tie up the protective flap over it, but water can still run off the roof and into the rear hatch if it is open. There are gaps in the awning at the hinge sites where rain can also come in. There is a gap directly over the fridge, but you can slide in the removable flap there if you want more protection over the fridge. There were days when I camped in strong wind and the awning looked to be at risk of getting damaged even when fully staked out, so I ended up stowing it. That would be where a Class B camper van has the advantage, because you can cook and eat protected from the wind and mosquitoes and the rain. It is nice to have a porta-potti so you don't have to dig holes in the bush. You have to get one that fits in the front storage box. I don't want it in any passenger cabin area from my experience on boats with a constant smell. The Thetford porta-potti 345 fits in the front storage box. I will most likely get a rooftop tent in the future for the trailer, but I am already trying to cut tongue weight for my car, so I do not want any of the 23.0 options they have, as they are all over 200 pounds, and it is possible to get ones for half that weight. I also like transporting the kayak on the roof of the trailer. I did get the 23.0 shower enclosure and swing out bracket, which works well, although the shower curtain support arms seem a bit flimsy. It comes with a floor and roof, which I have not used. There is a string of LED lights along the top end of the shower bracket that has a USB plug that you can plug into a power bank for lighting in the evening. The shower enclosure is made from a thick coated blackout material, and there are no potentially embarrassing or flattering silhouettes if you use the light at night for a shower. The shower works well using the Truma Aquago Comfort Plus gas water heater. You have a hot and cold water tap to blend to comfort. You must remember 5 steps for a hot shower. I've forgotten one on occasion, and then you end up with a cold shower. You have to turn on the gas, have the direct current breaker on, select the water heating mode and temperature on the panel in the cabin, and then switch the water heater on in the side box and the water pump switch. The only complaint I have is that there are constantly water drips that keep the shower box wet. If you first set your temperature and then close the shower head with a button on the shower head, it does still leak. There is also an air vent in the box that drips out some water as part of its normal function. Mine seems to leak excessive amounts of water. When you switch off the taps, the shower head keeps dripping for a while. I switch off the pump, open the taps to depressurize the system, screw off the shower head to empty all the tubing, but water magically keeps dripping out, including at the air vent. Part of the reason I think for the constant dripping when the taps are open but the water pump is off is that the water heater is above the air vent, taps and shower tubing. So there's a constant hydrostatic pressure until all water runs out of the water heater. Finally dry. Or not, some more drips. Pump is off, dry, Oh, still more drips. Depressurize the system. Still drips. And it's dry. Still more drips. And it still drips. And leaks out the air vent. And it still carries on. Quite irritating. And it carries on. I already see some galvanic corrosion after just 3 months in the shower box. Note that the exhaust grid of the water heater does let water and dust in, so I tape it closed during travel. You must just remember to open it before use though. Another thing to note is that if it is dark when you shower and the cabin light is on, there is a ventilation grid between the shower box and the cabin without any mesh covering it where mosquitoes get in. Another place where they can get in is if the rear hatch is open, because there is a small space directly communicating with the cabin at the roof. One thing to remember about the entire water supply, including the shower, is that you cannot use it when temperatures drop under freezing. The entire water system has to be winterized, especially the Truma AquaGo Comfort Plus system, to avoid serious damage. That is hard to predict and could occur here in the north in any month of the year. So the water system and shower is not usable for a large part of the year. But my fear of corrosion of the trailer from the salty roads already made me decide not to use it in the winter. I chose the furnace option for possible winter use of the trailer. The Truma Vario Heat furnace unit is located in the back of the shower box. You set the cabin temperature on the same control screen in the cabin where you set the water heater temperature. You select the furnace unit control versus the shower mode control by turning the dial and pushing to enter your selection on the menu. The furnace is very efficient and warms the cabin within minutes. There are rapid heating options and a quiet sleep mode setting. The main usefulness of the furnace I found was to prevent condensation in the cabin on very cold nights. If you heat up the cabin, the walls are not cold and your breath does not cause condensation on the cold walls. I used it to bring the cabin temperature to 21 to 24 degrees Celsius and then could often put it off for most of the night. One problem is that the water system of the trailer is not in the heated cabin, so if the temperature will drop under freezing for more than an hour, you can severely damage the water heater or any part of the water system. As already mentioned, unexpected cold snaps are common up north, so it severely limits the use of the water system in the shoulder seasons. I will not use the trailer in the winter on salted roads for fear of corrosion, so other than limiting condensation, you could argue to omit the furnace. I did not get boot bags, gear lofts, or additional fire extinguishers. So I mentioned my troubles with the leaking doors. The doors are very solid, but I do think off-grid trailers would benefit from changing the design to prevent water leaks, but also the window design. The windows slide up and are held up by a plastic latch mechanism. There is a mosquito screen that can also be slid up. The windows are not multi-positional and can only be fully closed or fully open with no in-between settings. I had to jerry-rig rubber stoppers to wedge the window open to have options in between closed and fully open when it is cold and windy, because the wind is directly on your head. As described in part 1, rain tends to easily come into the window and there is no way to keep them open and ventilate the trailer when it rains hard. I wish they had a different design with a window opening outwards with a hinge on the top side so that when it opens outwards it protects the opening from rain. Truck campers and RVs have such windows with mechanisms to keep water from coming in the top hinge. They also have a rubber seal with a tight positive closure for the window against the seal. Folks I know who have truck campers don't seem to have leaking issues with such windows. Also, it will be better to keep out dust. My unit definitely lets dust in via the window. The door seals did leak water, but it did manage to keep dust out. The dust came in via the window. The window has two panes with the bottom one sliding up. There is a brush border between the two panes to keep mosquitoes and dust out. The brush border works for mosquitoes, but fine dust does get through, as you can see here. A window that seals tightly against a rubber seal would work better. I had to always take a handheld vacuum cleaner to fight the slow accumulation of dust in the cabin. It is a tough ask to keep a trailer dust-free when being towed behind a vehicle on gravel roads. Just to illustrate the point, look at this plastic tube in the air conditioner rough-in box. The tube is to drain condensation from the zero breeze air conditioning unit. It is probably 2 meters long from the cabin down to beneath the rear crossbar of the chassis where it opens. It is on the opposite side to the water tank's drain valve. But somehow dust gets in via this 2-meter long tube and collects in the air conditioner cabinet. I also had to ensure the external air conditioner inlet covers are tightly closed to prevent dust from getting in. They don't have any rubber seals on them. Another irritation with the door design is the lock. It is hard to get the key in, and you have to wiggle the key a lot to get it in and out. It feels like it's going to get stuck one day. You have to turn the key to vertical to get it out. With the one door, after turning the key counterclockwise to open, it locks again when you turn it vertical to get the key out. So I have to keep the key in the lock and hold the button on the inside to allow me to turn the key to vertical to remove it without locking the door again. The LED light, in my opinion, should be moved back so that it is not over the door. It serves as a perfect ramp for water to flow over the gutter above the door and straight into the window. A nice touch would be to have the option of a red light cover, since the light is a bug magnet. A red light preserves night vision and does not attract bugs as much. The 117 litre or 31 gallon water tank works well. The water pump switch is located in the shower box. You access the pump for winterization through a panel in the rear storage compartment. I could easily go 2 weeks on the tank for 2 people for showers if you are careful. I took 2 standing pads for the shower. I did not use the water for drinking, although you can if you sanitize the system well. I used a water softener to reduce limescale buildup in the water heater because I have very hard water. There are tablets you use to descale it as well. I also use a RV water filter when filling up the tank. There is a drainage valve on the underside of the trailer to empty the tank. I found it useful when traveling when the power breakers are off to be able to get water out of the tank for the dog. The fold-out stove and wash basin work well. It's a neat design in that it rests on a bracket on the door of the box. I've read complaints about the 2-burner Dometic gas stove being underpowered. I've not found that to be a problem, since to limit weight I still use ultralight hiking pots that are very thin and prone to let food burn onto the base. So the lower power does reduce the risk of burn-on and works just fine for me. I always have a MSR reactor hiking stove as a backup and still will use that if I just want to boil water, since nothing gets anywhere near its speed to simply boil water. The Dometic stove is sensitive to wind, and I do wish I had selected the optional windshield. The grill on the burner inserts into rubber sleeves so there's no rattling. The stove has an electric ignition button. It also has an electric gas shut-off switch when you fold the stove up into the box. So although the stove, furnace and hot water heater runs off gas, they all three do need electrical power from the batteries to work. If your batteries ran totally down, you could not use any of them. The wash basin with a warm and cold water blending tap works well, and there is a plug and a PVC tube extension so you can let the water out into a bucket rather than just running onto the back end of the fender and onto the ground. I did find that one of the metal weave covered water pipes behind the unit was being pinched when the unit is folded up, and there was a significant dent with a frayed coating at that spot. I still have to be careful to sometimes push the pipe back when I close it to prevent pinching, or I will have a water leak sometime in the future. It is also important to level the trailer well if you want the water in the basin to drain correctly and not pool away from the plug. I used leveling blocks under one wheel if needed and glued a two-directional bubble level to the chassis at the jack so that I can tell when the chassis is level. There are 4 shelf levels in the rear storage hatch. They are fully adjustable. I found them too close together to be useful, so I took one level out. Lastly, I think some protective trailer body armor would protect your investment. I applied some protective body armor on the forward-facing parts of the trailer with black, vivid, indestructible vinyl paint wrap, and it has held up surprisingly well. It did take a lot of time to measure, cut out, and apply it. It would be nice if it was supplied with a trailer as an option. So to summarize my personal overall impression of the trailer, I would rate the trailer very highly, and I don't think you will easily get a trailer that is so well thought out and built, except for the few points that I hope off-grid trailers can improve on in the future that I have discussed in this review. The doors need to be redesigned to prevent water leaks and improve the functionality of the window. A multi-position window that is better at keeping out dust and can be opened in the rain would be nice. I had to add the extra door seals and extra gutters along the door edge and the roof edge above the doors. It must be possible to get smoother working locks for the doors. Also, sealing the rear hatch door panels would be nice so less water gets into the rear hatch door. I had to do that all myself. The dripping shower, I'm sure, could be improved. A mesh covering over the vent between the cabin and the shower box would be nice, then customers don't have to do that themselves. Some trailer body protection on the forward-facing surfaces and the chassis would give a lot of added value. It would be nice if the gaps between the fenders and the trailer body were sealed to keep stones out. The roof also needs to be sealed along the side rails to prevent water draining into the wall via the screws. An easy access panel to the battery power switch or a built-in battery level indicator would be nice to not be dependent on app connectivity. They could shift the light above the door back so that water does not run over the door gutter into the window. An option to put a red filter over the light would be a nice touch to reduce the attraction of bugs. It would be very reassuring if they addressed concerns about the potential for corrosion. Rubber isolation under all washers and plastic sleeves around screws, as well as consistent isolation between the aluminum parts and the steel chassis would be great. There are other off-road capable trailers you could consider, like Tactical Overland in Alberta. They make very similar trailers but with a slightly different design philosophy. They forego the rear storage hatch in favor of bigger cabin space with an elevated bed away from the door and storage under the bed. That would reduce the risk of a wet mattress if the door leaked and would also give sleeping space for a dog inside the trailer, which is nice, but the storage space is under the bed, which sounded like an irritation to me versus the inside cabinets and rear storage shelves on the Expedition. Their windows are multi-positional with a top hinge and a rubber seal ring, so the open window protects the opening to some degree in the rain. They only offer the Timbren axle-less suspension and not an equivalent upgraded off-road suspension. They are cheaper. Bear in mind there is no such thing as a perfect off-road trailer, and off-grid trailers certainly gets very close to that. I hope this review was useful and enjoy your travels.